Hey guys, mailbag vlog. I'm going to answer a couple questions that were put to me in the private messaging. Don't worry, your names shall be anonymous. So, hey Stef, my name is. I had a quick question for you about freelance dev work. If you got a minute to lend your advice, I'll give you 2 minutes. I'm currently a JS plus Python full stack developer. Good skills. But I'm brushing up on my PHP and WordPress so I can start looking for my first freelance clients. Do you find that code alone is sufficient for most jobs? Or do you also create graphics and work in the Adobe world, e.g. Photoshop, Illustrator, etc.? In other words, do I need to take time initially to learn how to create graphics, or is that just more of a cherry on top of that I can work on as I go? Thanks for your help in advance. Keep cracking out the videos. First of all, so you know your JS and your Python full stack, fantastic. Now for you to go into PHP WordPress, I'm sure you're finding it pretty easy, right? Because once you know your basics, then all the languages and so on become pretty easy to get into. And I assume that you're learning PHP WordPress because you see that's where the jobs are, right? That's where the jobs are. I would be doing Python JS full stack, maybe if I was doing startup work, maybe I had a very particular application where I wanted to leverage some aspects of Python perhaps that I needed to work with. Perhaps you had an AI layer you wanted to work with or something, I don't know. So as typical, when people actually get out there in the real world, they find that PHP and WordPress, however boring it may be or seem to be, there's a huge amount of demand. And as I said before, when you got tons of work and you're making great money and you're in huge demand, all of a sudden the work becomes a lot more fun. Anyhow, so do you need to be graphically inclined in terms of creating graphics for websites? Not really, I don't think so. I think if you have the WordPress theming skills and the PHP skills, then you don't really need to become an expert at Photoshop or Illustrator or anything like that. These days, if you're working with clients, chances are they will have a logo already for their business. In terms of the aesthetics, there are certain looks, if you will, certain structures to user interfaces in modern websites that we know work now. You know, whether it be banner-based or a top banner with 1 or 2 columns. This is the typical layout. So what I would suggest that you do is when you first see your client, you sit down with them and you ask them about the artwork. Do they have a logo? Do they have a color scheme for their business? They might likely do. And based on those answers, then you can show them common templates. We have a 2-column layout. We have the front page. We might go with panels, etc., etc. So just show them, some nice looking templates, or show them some nice sites. Say, what sites do you like? And then you could take it from there. You got to try to look at the design aesthetic from 20,000 feet, if you understand what I mean, so that you can sort of see the grid behind the design. And what you see with the grid is, as I said, it's pretty consistent. It's either panels based, or it's maybe one top panel with a left column and a right column. Usually on your side, the left-hand column would be the main content column, and on the right you have your menus, items. But again, it could be flipped, whatever. Show the client raw templates so they can take a look at that. And then what you would do is then have them provide photos or imagery related to their particular business. So no, the days of having to be a graphic designer in terms of web development are long gone. It's good to understand basic design principles like alignment, no more than 2 fonts per page, use of white space. I like to describe white space, for many years now, I describe it to people as breathing room. You want to give your site breathing room. Again, simple, clean layout with nice looking images, nice looking photos that don't require major work or preparation. is the key to success with these websites. If you need to do some image prep, then you could either partner with somebody on that, hire somebody on that. They may be able to provide that. But the need for high-end Photoshop work and Illustrator work, this is like old school web design that you don't see too much these days. I hope that makes sense. So no, a short answer is no, don't worry about it. Just do it on a need-to-nerd basis. The more valuable skill set is your back-end coding knowledge. That is for sure. That is for sure. Big time. Your ability to write code, implement WordPress, add plugins, lock it down, strip up a theme, etc. That's where the huge value is. And you could just, they may have a graphic designer, you may know a graphic designer, could just, prep a couple images really quickly. Again, modern day web design doesn't require Photoshop skills like it used to, for the most part. Next question. Hi, Stef. First of all, well done. Thank you for your vlogs. The information and knowledge you share is fantastic. The reason for writing this message is your opinion in choosing a specialization for a job for a living. A little bit about me. I'm 40 years old, live in Europe, working in logistics industry for at least 15 years. Lately, I took my university degree in computer science, trying to make a career change towards the IT field. As you know, a degree in CS is a little bit of everything: math, algorithms, network, electronics, visual, very basic knowledge of some programming language like C, SQL, PHP, HTML, CSS, Python, JS, and some project management, etc. Having no real work experience or internships, it seems very hard to apply for jobs. So I decided to specialize in one specific field thing and mastery it. That's a good strategy. Being 40 years old doesn't let me a lot of choices as we speak from the aspect of time. The choices that came in my mind in web development or big data with analytics. I know it's a matter of personal taste, but I asked for your opinion in that. What would you choose? Any other suggestions? Thanks in advance for your efforts. When I read some of these emails, people are just typing out quick messages. Sometimes they don't proofread, sometimes English is a second language, and sometimes I just mess up as I'm reading it, so my apologies. But I think we all understand what the question is. So he wants to know at his age whether he should get into the web development field or big data analytics. If you're doing big data analytics, that assumes you have a scientific background. You have a background working in the logistics industry for 15 years. It's not precise enough for me. I'm not sure what that means, logistics. I don't know if you would have the background to be able to analyze big data. So when you get into big data, you get into data sciences, there's a need that you're going to have supporting skill sets to go with that, right? So if you're doing data sciences, you have to understand data sciences before you can start writing the code to process all this data. And I would imagine the same thing as with big data analytics, perhaps. You would have to look into that. Now, that being said, I think the major issue is that with big data analytics, you're going to be looking for a job working for larger corporations, I would imagine, or businesses that do big data analytics. I don't think they would be hiring freelancers to do that, although I have not looked into that, but I really doubt it. I think this is a job, this is a career path, if you will, that requires or ends with you getting a job, which is cool. There's a lot of advantages to that. On the other hand, if you do web development, you have the flexibility of both getting into freelance, being a hired gun, or go working for a web development studio. Though web development has been around for since the 90s, it's still huge, lots of demand for it, and that's not going away anytime soon. Before you start thinking web development's old, it's relatively young. 15 years is relatively young, 15, 20 years rather, for any type of business or industry. So it's still pretty early stages in that regard, although the role of a web developer, as I've mentioned in other vlogs, has changed over the years. In the 90s, it was very design-centric. Lots of Photoshop work, lots of Illustrator work. And then in the early 2000s, it became much more coding, front-end coding. And then later on, it became front-end coding with usability. You had to become very good with usability, not just the user interface and the way it looked, but also usability became much more involved in it. It was always there, but the web professional over time separated more and more from a traditional graphic artist role. To give you a little background knowledge on this, in the early days, most of the web designers were graphic designers who were doing web design on the side. So they just kind of looked at the aesthetic, the visual appeal of a site. They didn't get into usability. They didn't get into functional layout. It was experimental. A lot of websites were just brochures online. But as the industry matured and as the technology became more advanced in terms of the web design technology and web development technology, the graphic designer role as a web designer slowly grew further and further apart, whereas now very separate things. So the great front end or the professional front end web developer, they're not only schooled in the coding, there's the HTML5, the CSS3, and the JavaScript, but they also understand usability, or they also understand user interface design. They also understand how to make these designs responsive and functional, something that graphic designers don't ever touch on, and something that 1990s web designers barely have ever touched on any of these things. So, coming back from my tangent, web design as a career versus data, big data analytics. It's as you said, it's a personal choice thing. I think with the web development stack, you're going to have more flexibility in the type of jobs and work that you can do, more different types of companies, big companies, small companies, doing freelance work, setting up your own web design studio or web development studio. So you have that flexibility with the web design, whereas big data, you're looking at more likely than not working for very large organizations, which has its own pros and cons, but you have less flexibility there. So it depends what you want to do. I think it's flexibility versus perhaps working for large organizations. But with the big data, you have to look into that. They may require that you have some sort of supporting skill set, a degree to go along with that. But you said you are doing CS, your CS degree. See, that's the thing with a lot of the universities. They're trying to expose you, a lot of university programs, they're trying to expose you a whole bunch of different things. And then, as you will learn, or you already know, if you're in the field, you really learn your craft getting in there, right? Doing the work and working with clients and building actual projects and stuff. But again, let me emphasize, before you get into project building, you should do your foundation, your core training first. That's why I structure my Studio Web courses that way. It speeds up the whole process of learning, and it will just make you a much better programmer much more quickly. So, so there's my 2 cents on that. All right, this is an unusual question from 2 weeks ago. It's a question about boxing. So I'm going to just, you can shut it off now if you don't want to hear the answer, but this is interesting. I haven't read this yet, but I'm going to read it. I've had a restrictive, isolated upbringing. My father is a control freak. As a result of this, I've always suppressed my emotions and become depressed. And though I would still be able to go on in life, but I hit some plateau where I peaked in depression. I just couldn't focus anymore in school. I quit college 3 times, started looking for an alternative route at the same time 5 years ago. I came to know about Floyd Mayweather, and his style of fighting resonated a lot with me. So I became very interested and passionate about studying the style. Elusive, slick, sharp, smooth, defensive. Yeah, Floyd is a master boxer. If you're not into boxing, if you're not into the art of boxing, Floyd's style could look really boring because he's so slick and he's doing all kinds of subtleties with his body positioning and so forth, that if you're a boxer, if you have a boxing background, you can appreciate and you go, wow, this guy's he's really good. But if you're not into the sport, you don't understand, it can look kind of boring. But yeah, if you're going to be a boxer, fight like Floyd. You don't want to get your head bashed in. The problem is that because of my restrictive upbringing, I got some anxiety which overstates my fear of brain damage.
I am constantly second doubting the decision to box or not. I will shadow box and tell myself, yes, I'm going to do it. Then moments later, I will see some brutal sparring on the internet and with one kid totally destroying the other, and I think this is just brutal. It is brutal, and when you see that, that's because you got a jerk of a coach and a jerk of a training partner. Training partners are there to help you develop as a fighter, not to beat the hell out of you. Doesn't mean it can't be stiff, good, strong fighting, but when you're a beginner and you're sparring, you should be not trying to knock each other's heads off. You should be trying to work out the technique and flow. There's got to be some contact, and as you become more and more advanced, as you become better, it's going to get more serious. But again, you shouldn't spar to try to destroy your opponent. You're there to learn. You're sparring. It's a training. It's a type of training. Although putting pressure is a huge part of the training, but don't knock each other's heads off. So if you have a jerk who's just trying to knock your head off, don't train with him, because you're not going to, you'll get something out of it, but you're going to get, you're going to get hit unnecessarily. Another thing, don't be an idiot. Wear a headgear when you spar. Wear a mouthpiece. I see some tough guys who decide they're not going to wear headgear, but the world's best fighters, the Tysons and the Alis and the Mayweathers and even the Sluggers, when they train, they wear headgear and they wear 16-ounce gloves, so to protect their hands and to protect your partners from, getting just cuts and serious damage. Again, they're training partners, not training opponents. So if you see a school where they're destroying each other and the coach lets that happen, don't go to that school, because you're not going to learn. Well, you'll learn, but you're going to get unnecessarily brutalized for no good reason. But that being said, when you're boxing, it's boxing. You're not playing badminton. And I got my nose broken 2 times boxing, because it's, things happen. You get in there, boom, 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 and punches are flying, and it wasn't malicious. It just happened. Although I was sparring, a really serious fighter at the time, and I was still learning my craft, and I just made stupid mistakes. But that was unusual. I didn't see too many people getting their nose broke, so it's something to consider. But you can get headgear that will protect you, but it makes it harder to breathe with that kind of headgear. Just letting you know. So let me finish. Then moments later, I would see some brutal sparring on the internet with one kid totally destroying the other, and I think this is brutal. I am not going to do this. Or I might think boxing is only for the intellectually misfortunate in society. All kinds of thoughts. I've been in the boxing gym on 4 to 5 occasions. What discouraged me is that I would get a mild headache that lasted for a few days every time after sparring. Oof, yeah. I went to the doc. He said it wasn't anything serious, but I thought maybe that was a sign my body's telling me I'm not built for it. I have a pretty small skull. Please give me some advice. Well, if you're getting headaches already, then I would probably refrain from boxing. Boxing, that means you're getting hit in the head. You may want to change your style if you can, not get hit so much. I was kind of like a boxer-puncher type. I didn't get hit too often. And I would always move and slip and slide. But if you're getting, and I never got headaches, but if you're getting headaches already, the brain is a thing you don't want to damage. You better to damage your hands, your knees, not that that's fun, but the brain is the last thing you want to mess up. So if you're already getting headaches, there's other ways that you can work out your aggressions, other ways you can calm your mind. You might want to try judo, jiu-jitsu, try stuff that doesn't whack your head. If I was going to whack anything, the last thing you want to whack is the head, because it's the brain, you don't want to mess with your brain. And you seem like a smart guy, well-written, and so don't smack your head out, especially if you're starting to get headaches already. I would say try another sport that doesn't damage your brain, or maybe spar with sparring partners where you agree not to whack each other very hard. If they say you're a pussy or something because you don't want to take shots to the head, forget about it. They're idiots, because you're going to box for X number of years. I don't know if you want to become pro or not. Chances are, even if you become pro, 80% of professional fighters get brain damage. That's one of the reasons I decided not to go pro as a fighter, one of the reasons anyways, because I didn't want to get brain damage. I said, you know what, I might have some ability, but there's an 80% chance I'm going to wind up with some permanent damage. So it's not worth it because the boxing career is done, if you're lucky in your 40s. That's the oldest you can get. I don't know how young you are, but then you got many more years. In terms of professional athletics, I was talking to one of my uncles who was actually a very high-level basketball player. He was one of the best in Canada in the day. And like 10, 15 years after his career, I would run into people who would recognize my last name and say, hey, do you know blah, blah, blah. And he was the type of guy, he would score, I think it was average 33 to 34 points per game. So he was really good. But what happened when he was 18 or 19, he was going for the Olympics, some guy jumped on his back and destroyed his spine. And so I asked him a few years back, I said, Uncle, if you had to do it over again, would you do the basketball again? And this is a guy who was in newspaper and all clippings, and he was pretty big, for that time. Anyway, and he said no. He said because for a few years of fame, fleeting fame, he wasn't a huge star or anything, but a few years of glory, we'll say, he says he has permanent pain in his hands from, permanent back problems. To him, it wasn't worth it. So he was actually one of the reasons why I decided not to take the boxing to the next level, because I got to a point with my boxing where if I wanted to go to the next level, I had to go like full time. I had to go hardcore. And to become a professional athlete, you have to become like a warrior monk. That's all you can do in terms of your diet, in terms of your sleeping habits, everything. So I wasn't willing to do that, and I wasn't willing to get brain damage. And then when I got my nose straightened out, trust me, it's a little crooked now, but it was far worse before. When I got my nose straightened out, they had to break it in 2 or 3 places. 2 or 3, I think it was 2. And the surgeon said, no more boxing for you. Nose, pretty weak at this point. So I said, forget it. I'm ugly enough, not going to do it. So, all right, long story, no, it's long. To finish off this long story, if you're getting headaches, I would suggest not doing it so much anymore, or maybe asking your sparring partners to not smash your head in. It's not necessary to take a hard beating. Now, light hits and stuff, whatever. But if you are getting hit with light hits and stuff, your body's telling you something. But if you guys are, boom, say, listen, don't knock my head off. We're being nice here. We're trying to learn technique, right? Because if a guy's trying to knock your head off and knock you out, first of all, that's not a great way to fight, but it's hard to practice those tricky techniques and stuff if you're always worried that you're going to get your head knocked off. That's why I use sparring partners. They're partners. You want to get it. You want to get some shots because you want it to be, somewhat realistic. But you want to be able to train some of those interesting slips and those moves, and you won't be able to train them properly if you're just worried that the guy's always going to try and rip your head off, right? So keep that in mind. That's my advice. Health is much more important. I rather be, one of my expressions, I'd rather be healthy and poor. I'd rather be healthy and poor than sick and rich. I'd rather be healthy and poor than sick and rich. And in fact, I have some friends of mine who were bike couriers their entire lives. They're bike courier bum type guys. But you know what? They're they're much older than me. They're like in their late 50s, some of these guys, friends of friends, and they're super healthy because they biked their entire careers every day, 5 days a week, super healthy. And I know these 50-year-old guys who got money and they're in constant pain and they're overweight and they're having health problems. Meanwhile, this poor dude, a couple of them, they bike all over the place. They'll bike 30 miles and they're like in their late 50s. No problem for them. So personally, I'd rather be the healthy, poor biker guy than the rich guy who's got all kinds of heart problems and all kinds of other health problems. So yeah, don't destroy your body because you only have one, and that brain, once you damage it, can't be repaired.